All right. So the last thing we're going to talk about on the tissues for A&P here is going to be the different types of muscle tissue and nervous tissue. And like I said, we're just going to finish one up. We will spend a lot more time, like I said, along with bones, discussing a little bit more in depth the structure of the different tissues of these types in that they have their own chapter. Muscle tissue, it is the nervous system that is stimulating it, and it's going to lead to actual contraction of these different types of muscle. We're going to see these can do a lot of different types of movement, move the body, move things through the body, like the heart, like the stuff through the digestive tract, the materials through the digestive tract. There's going to be three main types of this, which we have voluntary control over, which is called skeletal muscle, the heart muscle, which is cardiac muscle, and then all the other muscle that is in the body, which is smooth muscle, which is going to be the muscle that gives you goosebumps. It's what lines your digestive tract, makes up some of the muscles in your eyes, so that one's a little bit more widespread in terms of the different places we could find it. Skeletal muscle, like I said, known as kind of voluntary muscle. Sometimes they say striated muscle. Not the best thing to call it striated muscle because cardiac muscle is also striated. This has these long, unbranching, skinny cells, very long and narrow. They're going to have these striations on them, which are these like tiger stripes on them, and they run all the way down the muscle. These actually start out as many cells that fuse together, so these end up being what is called multinucleated cells, and we'll see in when we get to the muscle chapter that they have these alternating light and dark bands, and we'll talk a lot more in detail about what makes those happen, but those striations are distinct in this one. We consider this one voluntary. It is the one that we control with what's called the somatic nervous system, is what you have voluntary control over. Again, most of these muscles we would say are voluntary muscles. Again, shivering and things like sneezing or coughing with the diaphragm, stuff that you might not say is voluntary, still skeletal muscle. And you can see on these ones, the striations, those stripes in there, how these are long, parallel, unbranching cells. Cardiac muscle, on the other hand, is going to have branching on them. It is striated, not multinucleated. Every once in a while, I might have two nuclei, but generally a single centralized nucleus. But you're going to have these branching cells or bifurcating cells where one side will have just one part to it and the other side will branch into two. This means that a lot of the cardiac muscle cells are connected to one another and make a network. And again, also going to have visible striations. They do have these specialized structures in between the cells called intercalated discs. Again, AMP2 will talk in more detail about what these do, but they let the electrical change in one cell get moved to the next cell. We don't see these in skeletal muscle, so if you stimulate one skeletal muscle fiber, it does not influence other ones. You stimulate one cardiac muscle cell, it will influence other cardiac muscle cells. And these ones, it is a specialized system that triggers them, and they work in a kind of a networked group of cells to contract together. And the thing you can see here, these ones that are lit up down at the bottom here, you can see the branching cells there from one side to two. You can see those specialized intercalated discs, but again, centralized nucleus, branching cells. The last one is smooth muscle. This does not have those striations, still using the same kind of muscle proteins, but they're not organized in the same fashion, so you don't see these striations. Gives it the kind of the smooth look to it. It actually kind of sometimes every once in a while tends to look like dense regular connective tissue, but you should be looking for a centralized nucleus in these versus not in the dense regular connective tissue. They're thicker in the middle, so wider in the middle here, and then they're going to taper out on the ends. A lot of times we refer to this as visceral muscle because, again, it's a lot of those organs, the muscle that's in the organs. So things like the intestinal walls, the stomach walls, in the wall of the bladder and the uterus, all these are going to have that smooth muscle. We do not have control over this, so it along with the heart are both considered to be involuntary. And again, you can see it on these ones here when you're seeing it in the side view, that tapered cell, centralized nucleus tapering out at the ends. What's going on in these ones is instead of seeing them from a view like this, you've actually cut through them that direction. Higher magnification, again, you can see the centralized nucleus and the cells tapering out to points at the end. But the main thing is that means they can fit together nicely like this and make it this nice long sheet, and that's what you see with these muscles a lot of the time. And this again gives you a nice look at the rest of this here. Again, What is the structure? Where's the function? Where do we find it? Same kind of nice little summary on these ones. The different body membranes that I was talking about before, I mean, I would say nervous tissue, just as a quick aside here, know that there's two main types. Nervous tissue, know it's the first tissue type. It's neurons are the actual functional cells. A lot of times they're going to have a cell body, a bunch of processes on one end and a long single process out the other. But neurons are those message sending cells, and then you have support cells called neuroglial cells. That's all I want you to know for this first time through the tissue on that one. As we get into it more and talk about the nervous system, we'll talk about the parts of a nerve cell, the different types of neuroglial cells, but we're not going to worry about it on this first little pass through this stuff. The different body membranes, we've talked a little bit about serosal membranes. So those are ones that are lining those different body cavities, like the ventral cavity, the peritoneum, the visceral and parietal peritoneum that I talked about in a previous show. Again, all these epithelial membranes are epithelial in nature. We're just kind of coming back to touch on this here. You can see that there's four main types of membranes. You have mucus, serous, which we've already talked about, cutaneous, and synovial. So cutaneous membrane is a really easy one. It's just that epithelial membrane that makes up the skin. It is a dry type of epithelium. Mucous membranes, lining of the inside of the mouth, inside of the nasal cavity. Very similar types of cells to the cutaneous membrane, but not that dry type of epithelium. It's not that keratinized. We're going to see the non-keratinized, and there's going to be mucus secretions on that. We did also talk about serous membranes previously. These are those membranes that were lining internal cavities that are not open to the outside, like the visceral and parietal pleura, visceral and parietal peritoneum, and things along those lines. You can actually see the serous membrane, the serosa covering the heart right here. That is that pericardial sac. The inside of that would be the would be the parietal pericardium. The outside lining of the heart would be the visceral pericardium. So like I said, the skin is the cutaneous membrane. We'll get into this with the next chapter. Just know that it's stratified squamous epithelium. It does not have any secretions on it other than a little bit of oil and sweat secretions, but not enough to kind of consider it any type of mucousy or wet type of membrane. It's a very dry type of epithelium. Mucous membranes, like I said, are lining those cavities open to the outside of the body, which is going to be the digestive, respiratory, urinary, reproductive tracts. Generally, either stratified squamous, non-keratinized, or columnar is going to be generally what is lining these. And again, generally have a lot of goblet cells or mucus glands or saliva glands involved in these areas that are going to create a lot of mucus or other stuff that can trap things, and we can get rid of them that way. Sounds a little bit different in the small intestine for absorption, but again, you get this protection usually at the ends that are open to the outside of the body, a little bit more for absorption through the center here. And the serosal membranes, like I said before, those are things like the visceral and parietal peritoneum for that example, just the ones that are lining those closed body cavities. The fluid that is found in these cavities, they refer to as serous fluid, generally not large amounts of it, but that's what its name is. And again, serosa is just that serosa lining. That's what we call the serosa. The last one is the synovial membrane. We'll get into this more when we do articulations, but you do have some specialized joint cavities that are closed cavities that you have areolar connective tissue underneath, and then some squamous epithelium lining some of this, and there is no basement membrane. They secrete something called synovial fluid, which helps lubricate your joints. It's one of the few things that gets some nutrients to some of that articular cartilage. So just realize this is another type of body membrane. So those are the four different types of your body membranes. So what that'll do is that really finishes it up for the histology chapter. So this was, if I remember, is chapter 5 in the book. What we're going to start doing now is we're going to start actually working through organ systems and taking a look at first the integumentary system, but then we'll start working through the skeletal system, muscular system, and the ones like that. So I will see you next time.